Okay, everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have another great update for you from the brand Raven. They're, of course, founded back in 2018. They're headquartered out of the US. And in the past, they've really been a micro brand known for their vintage style homages with modern upgrades. Since then, they've really been moving towards a more unique and original design aesthetic. Yes, they do find really key classic things and kind of incorporate them to their designs, but they've really found ways to kind of create this own, their own original design aesthetic out of these classics, which I think is really great. And it's little touches and little tweaks and little blending of certain feature sets and certain attributes that you might not have found in the past, but maybe it's just kind of similar to that era. And they're very bold, balanced, and legible designs. For me, the minimalist look just screams Raven watches. So I've been supremely impressed with this little diver, the Solitude. So this is going to be my full review. Previously, I did kind of a range overview / kind of initial thoughts and impressions. This is going to be kind of, I'm going to share with you, my thoughts as an owner and having had this now for a couple of months. Now, this particular type of watch is a dive watch. Some key common characteristics in design language you're looking for a dive watch. Of course, you're going to want water resistance, typically through some type of screw down crown. You're going to want something that's tough, legible with a dive bezel, and a diver's extension on bracelet is always nice. This model is the Solitude, and basically it's a curvaceous retro-inspired diver with this really cool multi-function bezel option that makes it a very ultra versatile kind of general sports watch option that even works as a traveler's watch with that 12-hour steel insert bezel. So real big fan of that. These are going for $480 on bracelet or $430 on strap. They're shipped directly from the US, from Raven. So with all that said, let's go ahead and take a closer look. Okay, guys, so first piece of information on here that gets a lot of people confused as far as the sizing goes. It's actually 42 millimeters in diameter from 8 to the 2 o'clock of the case. So you measure from here to here, that's actually a 42. If you measure it from here to here, basically just the bezel, it's 40 millimeters. The dimensions make it feel a lot like a 40 because of the actual, I'd say, the balance of your proportions on here. But in all actuality, this is a 42 millimeter dive watch. And the nice thing is it wears so good. I actually even featured it in a whole segment about the best wearing 42 millimeter divers, and some people chimed in, oh, that's a 40 millimeter diver. But for all intents and purposes, when people measure, typically they avoid measuring the crown guards, so they'll be measuring from 2 to 8, and from there to there, it's actually 42 millimeters. So let's get that out of the way. Now the height is only 13 millimeters thick, which isn't super thin, isn't super thick, but because of the great K-shape and actually a lot of the weight of the thickness actually comes from this nicely sloped bezel there, it doesn't seem super thick. And then those bevels really do help to visually break up the space a little bit. And then, of course, this great contour line that comes in. Definitely very Seiko-esque. The whole case is actually inspired by an old school, really small Seiko diver from the past. But you can see that beautiful undercut there that really helps shape this thing and also give you such range of motion when you're wearing this on your wrist. I typically wear my bracelets a little bit looser, so the bracelet does end up past my wrist bone and closer to being on my hand. So being comfortable is a big thing for me, and making sure that the watch wears comfortably is quite huge. And with these contours, it helps this thing just wear absolutely amazing. Look at the brush and finish break there. It's definitely a lot to look at and a lot to enjoy. Although it's very symmetrical and very minimalist, it still has so much visual interest and so many little details that you find your eye kind of being captivated and drawn into. Now, this bezel action is still 120 clicks, unidirectional. So it's basically the dive bezel with the 12-hour insert. It would have been nice if they would have got like a 60-click bidirectional action, but you know what? At this price point, you can't really argue with it. But very nice, still easy to actuate, of course, because it does have the grip for a diver's bezel. And then of course, even in these gloves, it still works really, really well. Now, the crown is this great signed crown. As you can see, lines up really great. Actually, I just realized this kind of reminds me of the G.I. Joe symbol for the good guys there. So nice little callback to my childhood. And then you have these beautiful bevels that just swoop down. One thing I will say is that because the crown guards are offset from the crown itself, as you can see, typically the crown guards will be somewhere in the middle, and then you'll have more exposed on the top and the bottom. Here it's exposing the top, so when you do grasp, it's something you do have to be aware of when you're winding and obviously unscrewing the crown, that pretty much all your purchase is going to be here, and you're not going to get anything underneath. So that's just, you know, a part of the design and something to kind of be aware of, you know, and kind of in ownership and practical use. The movement inside, you can't see it, but you know what? It is an automatic Seiko Instruments NH35A. Great movement. The case back is solid though, and this is very nicely etched. And you can see, of course, everything solid from the bracelet standpoint. Solid end links and solid links. Solid folder, solid milled clasp with ratcheting adjustment there, so you can either use that as a dive extension, or if it gets a little warm or something and you want to give yourself a little bit of space to breathe on your wrist from swelling, then that's also an option, which is great. Also, you do have usable micro adjusts in the clasp, which that's not always the case in this type of clasp. So really nice that this piece has the mobility and clearance to really be able to use those micro adjustment holes, which is great. Now, as far as that dial goes, guys, really nice framed date there at the 6 o'clock. Nicely applied indices. You got that matte, really cool blue color that I just wasn't expecting. This is such a cool kind of powdery blue color that just renders and reads so many different ways in different lights. And it just, especially with this steel option, is super versatile and just kind of goes with anything. If you wear jeans, this is like the perfect, you know, throw on a pair of jeans and a t-shirt and throw this watch on, and it's really going to just dress everything up because of how nicely done this thing is. It doesn't have to be this nice. You know, when you get a dive watch, a tool watch, a traveler's watch, they don't have to be this finely done, this detailed, you know, this visually interesting, this balanced. But the nice thing is brands like Raven really take it up a design from the design notch, and then they really get with these manufacturers and these factories, and they just spec out these cases and finishes to a very, very high level, which I'm very, very impressed with, especially considering this is under $500. Water resistance wise, guys, 300 meters, so that's really good. Nice. This is, you know, professional level. Not that anybody's really diving more than probably 40 meters you know, recreationally, but in kind of the currency of divers, 300 meters water resistance is kind of okay. Well, that's a serious dive watch. There's really no complaints from that standpoint. When it comes to the lugs, this does have a 20 millimeter lug width there, and it does have drilled lugs, which is a very, very nice touch. Get it to focus there, you can see, so that makes strap changes much easier, which is great. And I think this is a great looking piece, especially with the shape. As you can see, the shape actually on here, it looks round as you come here. When you look at it straight on, it's more straight, it's more of a flat line. So when you put straps on here, it actually flows really well with the case still. So this thing is still going to look great on strap, but I'm really, really enjoying this bracelet. It's solid. It tapers down to 18, and then it's milled down to the milled clasp, and then the connectors here are just pin and collar, which I know can be a little bit more tedious to set initially, but the nice thing is, well, once you have pin and collar set, you pretty much, it's just set it and forget it. You never have to mess with it again. You can see here, this thing has a nice little bit of movement to it, but not feeling tinny. that's going to allow this to just be super comfortable. I mean, basically these links are close to what other people kind of set as a half link. So this is just going to wear really, really nice. So with that said, let's actually go ahead and get this piece on the wrist. All right, as you can see on my 7¼ inch wrist, this thing wears absolutely beautifully. Even up close, when you get this close to the camera, you get that lens distortion. It does make it seem bigger. It still fits very nice and centered on the wrist. Here, you get a little better perspective. You can see the bracelet a little bit more. The watch seems more centered. Look at the way the light just rolls off of that. I love that single link across. Of course, there are those accent links that kind of pin everything together, but there's something about that brushing and those long links, long, I guess, width-wise, really beautiful. The brushing is just fantastic. And it just gives you a nice retro vibe without really referencing anything that comes to the top of your head and makes you think, oh yeah, that looks like that. This thing looks like a Raven Solitude, and that is not a bad look. Look at how nicely it rides on the wrist. You can get great mobility. Of course, for me, since I wear them a little bit looser, it'll end up down here a little bit more. But the nice thing is, because of that cutout, still super comfortable, even when it slides its way past my wrist bone. So really nice from that standpoint. Love the color play here, and it doesn't have to have all types of crazy colors, and you know, it's not about quantity, it's quality. The choice of color with this steel bezel just looks gorgeous. And don't get me wrong, I actually really like the standard dive model, just as black and steel. That thing looks epic too, but this, it just serves such a different and unique place in my collection. So I'm really digging it. As you can see, just fits the wrist nicely. The milled clasp really helps balance it and anchor it on your wrist, which is nice, so it feels great. And then you have that nice double dome sapphire, so it's going to be quite legible. Even at harsh angles, you're not going to get a lot of distortion on it, because not only is there dome on the outside of the sapphire, that's domed on the underside, which is what creates that beautiful clarity. When you have ones that are just domed on top and then flat underneath, it's when you hit it at an angle, you start seeing all that distortion in there, which, you know, can be fun and give you a little visual play, but I prefer kind of that cleaner look with the double dome. You know, really classic proportions that fit almost any situation. I mean, this thing, it feels dressy enough because it's special looking, and but at the same time super casual and great with t-shirts and jeans. As far as you know, model variations go, there's really tons of different variations. Definitely check their site for availability, but let's actually go ahead and move into some loom shots, low light transition, and then get into closing thoughts. Okay, we'll go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, that BGW9 is just pumping away. Also, when you look at the dial, it is very easy to orientate yourself. You can see the big 12 o'clock marker there, and then it's offset by that 6 that is empty, because that's where the date window is. But one thing I like to do is actually do some low light transitions, so you can get an idea of how this is going to render in less than optimal direct sunlight, or my studio lights, which is kind of what they are kind of meant to simulate. When you're looking at it in harsher lighting, low light, transitional light, you can see that it is still quite readable. Look at the way the loom and the dial play off of each other, still very nice and readable. And that blue just has so many different color shifts, and it's crazy because it's not a textured in any, you know, it's not textured, it doesn't have, you know, sun ray patterns or brushing. It's really in just that glossy finish. Somehow it just does it. It just does weird and wacky things. Or actually, maybe it's not even, maybe it's a matte dial. Pretty sure it's matte. The gloss is just maybe coming off of that great sapphire crystal. One thing also that you'll notice in kind of the harsher lighting is how the light plays off of the finishing. When you look at how the negative space where the high polish is, or when the polish actually hits the lighting, and the brushing, the way the light, how uniform it glances and brushes over that brushing and moves through those links and glides. It's it really gives you an idea to and a chance to kind of catch some of those imperfections that tend to get washed out with the studio lights, but not too much to report back from that standpoint on here, because this thing was looking good pretty much at all angles. You know, again, this thing just wears great. I love it. It's handsome, it's unique, and I can see why this is a watch that's gotten so much attention from other micro brand owners, which is the funny thing. I don't think it's gotten enough attention from the market though. So guys, you know, comparable models though, you kind of compare this to there's a lot of competition in under 500 in that price point. But you know what? I think the Solitude really keeps pace with the best of them. You know, it's not the master. It's more the jack of all trades. It just does so many things right. Yeah, and maybe it doesn't have some loud, exciting feature that just kind of sets you off. But what it does have, it all just comes together. And it creates something that's very, very special. Even looking at it here, look at the way the light is playing on those links. There's just so much visual interest on this timepiece, and I just can't get enough of it. The color play, everything about it aesthetically is wonderful, and of course the finish and the fit is great. So I'm a big fan. Super finely executed and thoughtfully designed, and it definitely delivers a very, very solid value. So with that said, let me know what you think in the comments below. If you liked the video, please do a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.